Hello, I am Del Roden, and I'm interviewing Lori Sales artists on behalf of the Veterans History Project for the Office of Congresswoman Donna Edwards in the Library of Congress. We are working in conjunction with Prince George's Community College and PGCC-TV. Today's date is October 28, 2015, and we are located in the television studios of Prince George's Community College in Largo, Maryland. Our producer and director of the project is Chris Overby of PGCC-TV. In the room we have Jamal Thomas, Justin Smothers, and Chris Poole. The project is being coordinated by Dr. Sherelle Williams and the Mass Communication Department of Prince George's Community College. The purpose of this interview is to gain insight into the life of United States military veterans currently residing in the state of Maryland. I recently met Ms. Sales artist and hope to get her perspective and stories about her experience and her life before, during, and after military service. Let's begin.
Sure.
How shall I address you?
Miss Artist would be fine.
Miss Artist, okay. Can I ask you where you grew up?
I'm born and raised in Chicago, Illinois.
Oh, really? What part?
Actually, the south side of Chicago. Initially from the projects near the Chinatown area there, and then my mother tapped into the VA loan because my father served in World War II, and we moved into a home.
What was the name of those projects?
The projects, the Hilliard homes.
Hilliard homes, okay. And when did you actually live in the Hilliard homes?
Oh, from
you remember the years?
The years, I know that I had to be around 10 years old when we left there because I went into 5th grade into the new neighborhood that my mother moved into, which was very diverse neighborhood. We were the new black families that were moving in, so there was a lot of changes. So I remember that 5th grade very well. So I grew up in the projects up until 5th grade.
Okay. And where did you move after that?
After that, I joined the Marine Corps at age 21.
In 5th grade, where did you move from in Chicago?
I moved from the Hilliard homes, which was on 22nd and Clark, right outside of Chinatown in Chicago, Illinois. And then when I made it 10 years old, we moved into the house on 121st and Bishop.
Oh, okay.
In Chicago, Illinois. And I am a graduate of Percy L. Julian High School. I love my alumni.
Okay. We will talk more about that after the interview. I've got family from Chicago.
Ah, excellent.
Let's talk about your household growing up. Did you have siblings?
Yes, I had brothers older than myself, and then I have a brother that's younger than me. 2 years, 2 brothers older, 1 brother younger than me. So I was the only girl in the house with my mom, and my father was present as well.
So 4 kids, mother and father.
Yes, correct.
And you mentioned that your father served in the military.
Yes, he was a World War II veteran. Actually, my father was born in 1910, so my parents were a little up in age when I was born, so I had the pretty strict rules and regulations household. When Dad came home, we all sat at a dinner table and ate and things like that. So yeah, I had a typical kind of a family lifestyle, even though I was in the projects in the city.
Which branch of the service did your dad serve in?
He was an Army guy. He was drafted, so he didn't go voluntarily.
Did either of your brothers or any of your brothers serve in the military?
No, they did not. Actually, in my family, I'm the only woman on my mother's side as well as my father's side that actually joined the military.
Okay. How did you make that decision?
The decision was based off of living in the lifestyle of a model in the city of Chicago, growing up through high school, being professional with that, and not really fitting in. There was some things that were expected of me as a woman that I should do to get some of the jobs, and that was unacceptable to me. So my modeling career kind of faded away. And so I was actually working in high school also as a cashier at a train station, and the guys that were graduating from the Navy would come through those train stations from Great Lakes. And so I became like their tour guide when I got off work. You know, a couple of guys would be brave enough to come over, you know, what are you doing when you get off work? I'm like, well, what do you want to do? I would take them to the Sears Tower, over to Navy Pier, walk them up and down Lakeshore Drive, and just have a blast. So I got introduced to the idea of being military from them, singing their songs, you know, because of course after a few beers or whatever, they were just partying up, and I was just having a good time. However, when it came time for me to choose what branch of the military I would consider, it was 2 guys that had been in my life that were very close to me that I had dated. One guy I was actually engaged to shortly after high school. He said, Lord, if you're going to join the military, you need to come into the Marine Corps. Both of them had served in the Marine Corps or were currently serving. And I'm like, Marine Corps? Do they have women in the Marine Corps? because at that time that was just not common. We're talking like in the early 80s. And said, yes, they have women in the Marine Corps. So by personality, they thought I would be a good fit for the Marine Corps. And I would have to agree in the end. Out of all the other branches, I saw benefits. I see the benefits now, but initially, I definitely more of a match for the Marine Corps.
Let's back up just a little bit. You
Sure.
said you were a high school model?
Yes, I modeled professionally during high school. I'm a graduate of John Robert Powers Modeling School, which was on Wabash Avenue there in Chicago's downtown area. And after graduating, they asked me to come in and work for their office. And so I did that. And from that, I began to get professional assignments working over at the McCormick Place. You remember the auto shows? Well, then the models would wear full gowns. We would be dressed to the nine and actually performing and showing the cars, working in the stores with perfume, handing out cigarettes, because it was new for women to have cigarettes. All of those were actually paid modeling gigs, along with the fact that I modeled along Michigan Avenue at many of the high-scale stores there as a model as far as a runway model. I didn't tap into photo, which I really had a desire to do, but that was where I kind of pulled back.
And how long did you actually do the modeling?
I modeled all through high school, so I would give myself about maybe 6 years.
Oh, you began at 14?
Oh, yes, I started modeling very young because my mom saw the tomboy in me and was determined to make me a little girl as much as she could. So charm school was the beginning, and right after charm school, she put me into John Robert Powers School. And so I started modeling through them. And I used to just do a lot of stuff just with community things or whatever. But by the time I was a junior, I was doing pretty good financially. So I didn't think college because I was already making money. Equivalent, to sometimes my father, my mother would tease me, wow, you're starting to bring in as much money as your dad. But it was just fun work to me because I was just having a good time and he just happened to be paying me for it.
Okay. Now, we'll jump back to the meeting the Marine and deciding to go into the Marine Corps. At what age did you decide to go into the military?
I was 21, but I would say when I made the decision would be when I was 20, when I was 20 years old. So I had been out about a year and a half out of high school, 2 years or so. I did go to school for electronic technology for a year. My brother thought, since I enjoyed math, which he says, oh wow, if you like math, you should check out this technology. That was the beginning of the Xerox machines, and everybody was working on Xerox machines, and that was the big deal. Well, I did well the first couple of months, learning about the resistors and the diodes and the binary counting. That was all good. But when they actually put a television in front of me and said, okay, now we need you to figure out what's wrong with it. And I'm thinking, you need to take it to the shop. and like you're laughing, the guys laughed. They're like, no, Lori, our assignment is to figure out what's wrong with it. So we had to check all these diodes and resistors. Boring. I was like, I can't do this. And so that ended the idea of me being a technician. And shortly after that, I said, I need to just do what I really feel like I can do. And I can leave my parents home, I can grow up, change my life, enhance my life. And so January, I made 21. In February of 1982, I was in the Marine Corps boot camp.
So you did attend college, and that was just for a year and a half before.
Yes, actually a year.
A year before.
Which was a huge benefit for me because I actually graduated from boot camp with a strike. So I was never a private. I was a PFC due to the 1 year of college that I had underneath my belt. So it really paid off in the end.
So what rank did you finish with?
I finished as a staff sergeant during the reserve time. I ended in active duty as a sergeant, E5, but during the 3 years time that I served as active reservist, I got a promotion to staff sergeant, which is E6, and becoming a staff NCO.
Okay. Were you happy with the choice to join the Marines?
Definitely. I was a Marine, a true diehard woman Marine to the end, which I say woman Marine because back in my era, woman Marine was the way they referred to us, WMs, for short. Nowadays, a Marine is a Marine. A lot has happened and evolved for the good for women that served, but it was a perfect match for my personality. So I have to agree with the guys that evaluated me. I'm a match today for the Air Force, but back then I wasn't because there's significant differences between the branches, and the Air Force and the Marine Corps are miles apart as far as their way of being and their discipline actions and so forth and so on. It's just totally two different worlds.
So what made you well suited to be a Marine back then?
Well, I told you I was tomboyish. I was athletic. It's not that I'm a person that likes competition to the point of one-on-one, but I like being challenged. And I'm a huge team player. And when it comes down to being structure, order, processes and procedures, big deal for me. That's a big deal. And the Marine Corps brought all of that out. So I didn't like the fly by night, just kind of pull something off kind of way of doing business. That's not who I am at all. So the Marine Corps pulled all of those qualities out where I was a fit. Many people that don't work out well, specifically in the Marine Corps, is because that's the part where they find out the culture they don't fit.
Let's go to your early service. Where did you get your first training?
Boot camp for Marines, women Marines, is Parris Island, South Carolina. That is the only place for a woman to become a Marine. And we only actually have 2 duty stations in the Marine Corps, which is also San Diego, California. And we tease and call people that, well, I should say men, because the only person who can go there is a man. A man that's a graduate of boot camp out of San Diego is teased to be called a Hollywood Marine. Because they were in California in comparison to the real deal of what you get being in South Carolina and what you have to deal with to get through boot camp. Part of that would be sand fleas, which are insects that will bite at you and bite at you and bite at you while you're standing at the position of attention. And so if you can actually survive that, you should be a Marine. Quite a bit of a torture. We think it's a setup that they planted them there.
Let's start with your very first day.
Sure.
So you leave Chicago and you go down to North Carolina. What happens when you first arrive?
Well, the first arrival is actually to a hotel the night before, in the middle of the night, seems like, and then they put us out, and it's almost like the airplane trip is kind of, I don't remember it at all, because you arrive in the middle of the night, and they're just screaming and hollering at you and barking out orders. I mean, overkill. I could say that now, but at the moment you're like, what in the world? Because no one understands why that's even necessary, because it's like, just stand up, okay, we can stand up, but you don't have to really go to the far levels of where they were going with some of the orders of doing the simplest things, like stand up, turn to the right, turn to the left, was just severe. But I remember that part more than I remember the plane ride or how I even got there. But when we landed and got off that bus, you knew you were in a different place.
So you went to the hotel and you took a bus from the hotel?
We took, that's the part I don't remember very well, is that from the hotel stay, we were taken to the airport and flown to South Carolina, and then we were bused, of course, from South Carolina. It was a room at the airport where everybody kind of sat around waiting for the bus. And so you just kind of sit around, no talking, you know, everything's very orderly, you know, you just kind of sit there and be quiet and, you know, speak very softly. And then, of course, when they come in, all hell breaks loose. And now you're taken onto a bus that takes you over to the boot camp, I shouldn't say boot camp, to Parris Island, South Carolina, where boot camp took place for us. And that's when it really gets loud, for lack of another term. I mean, they come on the bus and it's screaming and hollering, and women had to stay on the bus longer than the men, and so we had to actually watch the whole episode of how these men were being chartered off the bus, and it was like, wow, that was deep. You know, not even assuming that we're next, you know what I mean? And then our turn came, and so it's pretty dramatic.
Were there differences in the way that the women were escorted off the bus versus the men?
Not at all. Not at all. The tones were different just because we're now hearing this from women, because men get this real raspy voice, drill sergeants, they pick up. Women, I can't say they don't have it, but still it doesn't sound exactly the same. But I think they're a little louder than the men were, a little more personable, you know, as far as getting in your face. They would get very close.
You had all women drill sergeants?
Yes, only. Completely different than the Army, to the point of We were trained only with women Marines. We were in a certain part of the base that was specified for women Marines. The only time we saw a male Marine at the very beginning was in the chow hall. And that was if you took a quick glance at them, because they were serving our food. And it was honorable for them to have that position because they did well on the rifle range and they would get released. But other than that, we didn't see men until close to graduation, when we had to go out and about away from our area for something like a doctor's checkup or something of that nature. But as far as physical, our actual training and our physical activities and our classroom sessions, women.
Now, when you got to the base and you started your basic training, at what point during the basic training did it become routine or normal? Did it?
I would say no. The last, I want to say 2 weeks we were there. We were released to be able to go out independently and do things, partnered up with someone, because I remember calling home and speaking to my brother on the phone, and I was ecstatic about that because he was home and I was home. I was about to come home, that is, and just the fact that I was on the phone, because it was payphones back then in that era, but I had gone 2 months basically without any phone contact. If you had communication with your family, it was via a letter. Everything was a handwritten letter. We weren't making phone calls. And on that note, totally opposite than my girlfriend that was in the Air Force. She went to boot camp after I was now through boot camp serving in the Marine Corps, and she calls me. I'm going, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I just called to say, hey, how you doing? I said, aren't you in boot camp? How are you calling me and you're in boot camp? How is that possible? So totally two different sides. So we're completely disconnected from the world. When you arrive at Parris Island, South Carolina, you are completely under their rule and thumb for them to make you what you need to become in order to survive, which is a Marine. Because in Marine Corps boot camp, you're called a recruit. You don't earn the title of a Marine until you graduate.
How long was the boot camp?
It was 2 months.
2 months.
So arrived in February, graduated in April.
Did you make some close friends while you were there?
During the boot camp, I would say so much close friends, but certainly the camaraderie, the necessity to work as a team with strangers was a definite. One interesting experience that I really want to share and try to keep it as clean as possible would be being in the laundry room, pressing our camis. And it was, a couple of white females, a couple of sisters, African-American women in the room. And I had a young lady there that I actually did not know from Chicago, but she was also from Chicago. I met her right before we all took off on this plane. And the white females were just asking these odd questions. They thought it was kind of odd that I could wear green eyeshadow. Oh, wow, you can wear green eyeshadow. Oh, you can blow dry your hair, because they had never been around African Americans. And so I remember her turning around and saying, and just know that